Okay, so it's the wee early hours of the morning. Normally, I never make something this early. It's before I go to my day job, if you could call it that, based on the hours. But I was just watching TJ Kirk, also known as the Amazing Atheist YouTuber, talk about Mark Levin, talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Talk the truth. It's the American dream, not the Soviet dream. John Rockefeller, we're supposed to hate him. Thanks to him, we have energy, natural gas and oil. He became a multi-billionaire. So what? John Walton, we have Walmart, where people can get things at a decent price, and they employ tens of thousands of average Americans. Great, the family's worth billions. So what?
And TJ made the point that it's not capitalism that necessarily builds things. And this reminds me of an old biscuit. Just the whole, my ideology produces everything good, basically, and confusing the sources of production and the methods of production with systems and how that actually ties into an even bigger problem that Michael Crichton talked about in The Sciences, in some prefaces of his books, which is the marriage of profit, motive, and pure science, quote unquote. Anyway, or the degradation of pure science with the profit motive. Okay, there we go. So in the United States, there seems to be this idea that the profit motive is kind of almost this holy force. I guess the invisible hand or laissez-faire and all of that is what produces, according to types like Mark Levin, all the stuff we see around us. Well, curiously, most of the stuff we see around us is produced in China and places like that, where they have communist regimes, etc. And the workers are in rather poor conditions, which is why we can afford all these things in our capitalist businessmen, having the business acumen that if I can produce something more cheaply, I can turn a fatter profit. Yeah, just based on market forces, how much greed plays into that, I don't know for any individual business, large or small, but it's definitely morally questionable, and it's definitely not something that's magically produced by capitalism. Also, voting with your dollar. TJ Kirk addressed this. So, like, some people might say, well, the market will equalize itself because people won't want to buy stuff that's built by slaves. Clearly, demonstrably, that's not the case. No one has the time to pay attention, as oftentimes when I talk to people about issues that directly affect them, like the quality of their water, they'll be like, oh, I don't have the time. I focus on what's important. I'm like, what's more important than the quality of your drinking water? Now, I understand that more or less in the United States, it's fine. Most places, especially relatively speaking to the recent past, but still, there's room for improvement, and there are potential problems downstream. It's an interesting thing to consider, and this is where it gets into the profit motive. So the profit motive would say that's not an interesting thing to consider, because right now it's not going to really directly correlate to a bottom line, to a profit. It's hyper-capitalism in an ideological form. So that's why people are always trying to look busy or be busy at something that produces or does X, Y, Z. And in the past, all of the ideas we developed, like the ancient Greeks, geometry, etc., they were very almost lazy in a way, and very kind of, a lot of people would say, daydreamers, airheads. That's one of the reasons that a lot of these geeks at Silicon Valley were portrayed as being like unshaven and unkempt, because they were so focused on their little coding project or whatever the hell they were doing. And that's more in the spirit of pure science, where you're pursuing knowledge for its own sake. Like in front of me, there's this desk, and certainly this desk was produced to turn a profit, to feed a family. It's my adopted family's I guess it's my grandfather's grandfather. So yeah, he built this himself. It's a very nicely built desk, but that also came, in part from the joy of craftsmanship, the joy of creating. So it's people that create good things because it is satisfying and because it's interesting and because of direct necessity. Whether or not that's done in the context of getting a profit from it is somewhat irrelevant, because oftentimes people who produced such things, especially like when they were farming or when Einstein was working as a patent clerk, he was working on this really crazy physics stuff and revolutionized our understanding of the world. So, where was the profit motive there? It created technologies, I think, that later on directly sprang out of it, like nuclear and etc. And that was applied science, and that's where the profit motive does come in applied science. But dude, even before that, there's also the government interests. Like, I think DARPA is what created, in part, or really in a huge part, the internet. It was a conglomeration of government programs like DARPA and CERN, because Tim Berners-Lee was working at CERN, and all of those elements connected. And yes, governments do want to turn a profit, but there's also the need for defense, the need for communication. Just need is what does it. The theoretical framework is a side of it. So when we start, assessing policies based on whether or not they're capitalist enough or socialist enough on the other side, you're not going to come up with effective solutions, because you're talking nonsense. And that's all I wanted to say. In terms of like the science and profit thing that I've already kind of covered, I wanted to just really quickly expand. I know I just said that's all I wanted to say, but it's early, so I'm all there. You've got to understand that people will lie, and I think this is a big problem with research institutions. People will lie and fabricate results, etc. Even like professionals, like doctors. I think some doctors for the longest time recommended cigarettes. Now I don't know if that was out of ignorance or like, well, the information is incomplete, so blah blah blah. But it's not necessarily a boon for scientists to be looking to make a profit, because you're going to also try to rush your results, and it might hamper the output. Whether or not in actuality this is the case, I don't know, but I think that there's some evidence for it, like with the amount of drugs that are pushed through, the type of drugs that are pushed through, drugs that will be marketable, like our Prozacs and our Viagras and etc. Yeah. So there we go. There's my really early morning, somewhat groggy spiel. Take care, everybody.